Hello and welcome back to another podcast episode of American Pylon. Joined here by my counterpart, James Thomas Fanning IV and David Grayson behind the computer and the mic. We're missing Tyler Combs again.
Yeah. Tyler now has decided to take another exotic vacation. He's at the beach this week. So
where did he go?
I think he's in Panama City.
Why was he referring to Central Time then?
Because he's in Panama City.
Oh, yeah.
Is that on Central?
I forget the beach.
Yeah, he was texting. We were going to try and have him call in, but it didn't work out this time. But we're still working on the technology.
That's just what we told him.
For our 247 listeners, we're going to get Laguna Dog on here just as soon as we can get this technology figured out. Yeah. It's going to be great.
I'm all for that. But today we're going to shy away from Georgia a little bit. We're going to expand, talk a little bit more baseball, and then we're going to have a couple fun Mount Rushmore discussions. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. But before we jump in, I want to give a shout out to our partner, In We Go. You heard us talk about them on the show previously, but if you haven't yet, you definitely need to check them out. In We Go, for just $30 a month, allows you unlimited access to events in and around the city. They are in Atlanta, Denver, and Phoenix, and actually
just went live in Washington, D.C.
That's right, just went live in Washington.
Our D.C. listeners, be sure to plug in promo code Pylon, get $10 off your first month.
Yep. So
I know we have a lot of you. So.
Yeah, a lot of exciting stuff on there. So
I'm going to see Wiz Khalifa with Ray Strimmerd on
Is
Tuesday.
that how that?
I think that's how it's said. How you pronounce the band. I'm not totally sure though.
Okay, well that's fair.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that though. Going to see it with Reese.
So now for a limited time, if you plug in the word Pylon into the promo code box, you'll get $10 off that first month. So be sure to check them out at In We Go. So, yeah, we want to jump in, keep it pretty light, probably a little bit shorter than normal, but I wanted to talk baseball here, which isn't something that we get too far into.
We're approaching September, so it's almost time to care about baseball.
And we'll talk a little bit more about how much people care, actually, at this point in time at all. But I wanted to start off by talking about David Bode, the Cubs player who had an amazing walk-off the other night. They were playing the Nationals in Wrigley, and the Cubs went down early, 0-3 into the ninth. And Bode, who's, I would argue, relatively unknown member of the clubhouse, comes up, 2 outs, bases loaded. He's down in the count, and this is kind of what you dream of as a kid, right? Like growing up and playing baseball in the yard with your friends or whatever, and absolutely launches a grand slam into left center, and the place goes nuts. It was a great call on TV. If you haven't seen it, I don't know, maybe we can work in some video overlay if you're watching on YouTube. I don't know how if we can do that, but anyways, definitely check it out. But while that was a great instance and a great play, it's more so what happened in the aftermath of that I want to talk about, because
he broke one of the major unwritten rules of baseball,
which I think is stupid now.
I'm kind of over the unwritten rules. I think they kind of make baseball a little. Well,
yeah.
You go on your rant. Will's the Cubs fan here, so let's hear
So
it.
I think this surpasses Chicago Cubs fandom in general. I think it's just the climate of baseball as it stands today. So if you didn't see the play, David Bode had what I would argue is a slight bat flip. It's one thing to have a bat flip or to toss your bat in the direction of the opposing team's dugout if it's in the middle of the game and it's not that significant of a play. But when you're coming up and you're walking off, with a win on a grand slam, in my mind, there's no better time to do that. And it's been argued now time and time again. We see players like Bryce Harper sporting slogans like "Make baseball fun again," that this kind of just pushes that back into the limelight of, should this unwritten rule of not flipping your bat, acting like you've been there before, whatever you want to call it, is it past that time? And is it time for them to bring some swagger into this traditional game that's, in my mind, remained stagnant as far as that's concerned for such a long period?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think that baseball there's so many rules that you have to act a certain way in so many different situations. I mean, I didn't grow up a huge baseball guy, so I know some people really respect that tradition, and that's part of the game. And you have your old timers that are, like you said, act like you've been there. They have to follow these rules. I wish we could kind of get away from that. I think it'd be fun to see a younger generation come in, some guys with a little more energy. As much as I hate to use an example because I don't like him, but like Cam Newton, the way he is for the Panthers, it would be fun to see some guys in baseball like that, and especially in a situation like the one we're talking about where, I mean, it's a walk-off, the game's over, you're not directing anything towards a specific player. Like, it should be okay to celebrate with your teammates, in my opinion, without, having to make a public apology for it, worried about getting hit your next at bat, that you play that team or anything like that. So I kind of agree with you. I think that it makes the game a little bit more boring, and it might be one of the reasons people don't seem to be watching as much.
Yeah, I guess I can see where traditionalists are coming from because, in that phrase, baseball is such a traditional sport. And David, I definitely want to get your insight into this. You played high school ball. I'm just coming from a standpoint as being a player that was a part of a lot of all-star rec teams, when I was batting off the tee. So
I was all SEC at catcher in slow pitch intramural softball in college.
So take these opinions for what they will. I'm coming at this from a fan standpoint and what I want to see when I turn on the television. I think people shy away from sitting down and dedicating a whole lot of time to watching a baseball game because you don't have the constant action like you're going to find in a sport like, certainly not like football. And you could even argue the NBA. I mean, take it for what you will in the regular season. But as a purist in baseball, David, I kind of want to hear what you think. If this is warranted, if he should have even issued an apology, what are your thoughts on that?
And you were a pitcher in high school, right? So did you ever have anybody flip their bat at you, or not at you, but after? Or did you even ever give up a hit all of high school?
Yeah, I gave up a couple hits.
Couple. Nobody's perfect.
I did lose to a one-hitter, though.
I did. Yeah, one air by your fielders.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
You've been telling us that story since college.
Yeah. I
regale us.
Is
that how that term is used? Regale us with your story.
Told on the hoof.
Yeah, so there was a walk, so that's how we got a runner on. So it wasn't a perfect game, but it was a no-hitter. And a guy, next guy up to bat, hit the ball in the outfield, and my fielder just completely hit his glove, fell, hit the ground. The guy scored, and that was the end of the game.
And it was 1-0. It was the bottom of the seventh?
It was the eighth.
What it is?
It was
the eighth in high school?
Yeah, because it was extra innings, and that was it. And that was the game. So
in hindsight, I guess instead of walking the guy, you should have struck him out.
Yeah, that would have. Yeah. Well, honestly,
now you know. That's why you watch film.
That would have been. What was funny though. I never forgot that game. That was a really crazy game, and I actually met the other pitcher of that game in college.
Oh yeah, in Athens?
No, when I was at Georgia Southern.
Okay.
And we didn't know each other before then. I don't even know how we started talking about it. I think we were just like, I went here. And I was like, oh yeah, had this crazy baseball game, and he's like, oh my god, I was the other pitcher of that game, and
he's like, yeah, I broke up a no hitter by some schlep on the mound.
But you know what made it even worse? He was the guy that hit the ball with the
No way.
Yeah,
so you gave up the so that guy pitched a shutout and had the walk-off.
Well, the walk-off error hit.
Walk-off error.
Yeah. So it was pretty much just
walk-off at bat.
It was pretty much just me and him out there on the field, and he hit the ball before I did. So
yeah, there's another thing you could have done in hindsight. You could have hit a home run when you were at bat.
Do more.
Yeah,
just do more.
Back to your question though. I hate it. I mean,
you hate the bat flips?
Or you hate the rules?
I hate the showboating. It's I mean, I was just always a player that you do your talking on the field. You don't have to flip your bat to explain that you just hit the ball out of the park. I get it. If you're excited in the moment, and it's kind of one of those, you're excited and you threw it and it flipped, but not like a taunting thing. I think you just do your talk with your performance. You don't have to do all this extra stuff, and just play the game. I don't know if maybe that brings people to watch. Maybe they like that.
I feel like at the end of the day, it is a game. They're playing it at a very high level. You don't want to take away anything that they're doing there. But
no, I don't.
It should be fun.
I don't really. Right. Yeah, I don't really care. But it's at least own it, I guess. If you're gonna do it, I don't think anyone at the end of the day cares about apologies and I'm sorry.
So you would rather him have been when they asked about an apology, be like, "Oh, I hit a grand slam in the bottom of the ninth." Who? Of course, I flipped my bat. Why? You think that would be more
that's what I'm saying by own it.
Yeah.
If that's your character, that's your persona on the field, and you want to go that far to do it, then just be like, "Yeah, I did." If people don't like it, Yeah, I mean, I get it. We're trying to be a role model for the kids or whatever, but still smile about it at the end of the interview.
Yeah,
Like,
I
you
mean,
just crushed it. You know?
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, if the pitcher doesn't, well, it's like, I think it was Miami in the late 90s, early 2000s when people would get mad at them for dancing when they scored. And their response was, well, don't let us in the end zone.
Yeah.
Kind of, it's like, well, pitcher, if you don't want to see somebody flip their bat, then strike them out.
I guess my answer is kind of a mixed bag because I'm sitting here saying, like, if you do it, own it. I don't like to watch sports become, like blitz video games. So there's a line that you can't let it keep creeping and creeping until it's just going to be like a ridiculous. It would be sad to see college players doing what NFL players do in the end zone. It's not that much different, but that's why they have those rules in place because it's like, get over yourself. You don't need to campfire in the end zone as a college player because you scored. Like, you're representing your team. You're out here for.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like there's a pretty big gap between like all these ridiculous celebrations that these NFL players are, choreographing and stuff, and a guy, hitting a home run and just spur of the moment, like tossing his bat. Like, I don't know. I don't feel like it's not like he was doing cartwheels around the bases or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I do.
It's not like he knocked the first baseman's hat off when he ran by or anything.
I do kind of agree with you, David. I'm kind of torn because I come from. The way I look at it is like you do want somebody to act like they've been there before. Like, so I definitely get that perspective, but for me, it particularly comes more when I'm watching football, right? Now, it's not so much like the high stepping into the end zone, like that stuff doesn't bother me, but some of the shenanigans that like T.O. would pull back in the day,
yeah,
I think that's over the top, right? Like, we get it. You scored a touchdown, that's your job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like if you're wide open and you run into the end zone, like nobody was going to stop you. Just get the ball back to the referee, and get back on the sideline.
I'm gonna start doing it at work. Just like run this.
Yeah, seriously. When you do, when you do exactly what you're paid to do every single day.
Just like
I'll be at the pharmacy and fill a prescription and
throw my chair under the desk and just go nuts.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're expected to do, right? So, the idea of this is like the greatest thing you've ever done. I mean, act like you've been there, but at the same time, and we alluded to it a little bit. Baseball.
But a grand slam in the bottom of the ninth to walk off is like a once in a career type thing.
Yeah, and they actually asked him in the interview, has this, when was the last time this happened? He said, this has never happened. I think he had a walk-off in high school, but he's never had a walk-off grand slam, and I don't know if he's even had – I don't think he's had a grand slam in the majors. I mean, he hasn't been up that long. But
yeah, I mean, I think I don't know the stats, but I would assume lots of guys come and go without ever hitting a grand slam in the majors.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, it's
I certainly did.
To me, it's like, look, let the guy have his moment. I think for them to put pressure after the fact for him to go back and to apologize is dumb. What's done is done. It wasn't, as I mentioned, it wasn't something that he did in a moment that was, just kind of like neither here nor there. It didn't have an impact.
Here's the line, right? If only people over the age of 18 are able to watch baseball, nobody cares about that. Like, we would all see the bat flip and be like, oh yeah, like we wouldn't have a single thought about it unless it got egregious, right? Like he chunked his bat into the dugout and hit somebody in the forehead. Like, there's a line, but yeah. But I think the pressure, the social pressure, is about kids, and I think that's the driving thing. Is like,
see, I think that's kind of.
I think
you're basically saying this guy flipped his bat. Think of the children.
I'm not saying it's legitimate. I'm just saying that, like, if we're all adults watching it, no one cares, and I think that's where the social pressure comes from. Is like, we're not sitting at home like, oh God, like that's
some people are.
I mean, I guess.
Okay, but let me just say this: if you think that it puts the sport or the team or the franchises in a bad light, I mean, let's be honest. Like, I would say a lot of these kids have smartphones and they all follow these athletes on Instagram. Like, what are these kids seeing of these athletes off the field and how they're living their lives? I'm not saying that athletes should have to change that, but you can't look at this instance and be like, this is a bad influence for something that he did that he was supposed to do on the field and is celebrating in a manner that I don't think is egregious whatsoever.
Yeah, and it's not really doing it like it's only a big deal because it's baseball, because it's a thing that you're not supposed to do in baseball. Like I would argue that LeBron James is more of a showboat than that guy was, just on a night-to-night basis, and nobody really considers him a bad guy, and nor should they. I mean, he seems like a good guy off the court. He likes to have some fun on the court and be kind of animated and stuff. So I think if this happened in another sport, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I don't know what it is about baseball that it just has.
And maybe I would have a different opinion if it was a player that like I really dislike.
Yeah, if Bryce Harper did this, then we would all be like, "This is ridiculous."
Yeah.
Like there are rules here.
That's exactly.
If it was like Yasiel Puig or something, like
Puig and Harper are the two that if they did this would be like a totally different conversation.
Which I acknowledge. Like I'm coming at this with a fan bias. If this was in a game that there were two teams and it was a player that I didn't care about, I think I would still maintain this viewpoint. But yes, to this point, if it was Yasiel Puig, I can't stand when he steps out of the batter's box and licks his bat. I think that's one of the dumbest things. I don't know where that stems from, but I think it's
the
dumb.
pine tar tastes good.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. But if it were him with a walk-off, you're probably right. Maybe I would change my tone.
Yeah.
But I think if I'm going to maintain this line, I should do my best to let bygones be bygones. And if a player I didn't like did this, just let it ride, because I do think that it's stupid. But to this point, and we did talk about it a little bit, is the declining viewership of not Braves, but baseball.
Braves are
Braves.
increasing.
Yeah, we're actually
everybody's watching the Braves.
Everybody's watching the
We're good
Braves
right
now. But when it comes to the viewership of baseball, and it's been chalked up to a lot of different things. I mean, ticket sales are declining, I would say, across all sports simply because of the cost to take a family.
It's expensive, and then it's gotten so fun to watch at home. I mean, you can get such high definition and the in-home entertainment and stuff you can get now. I think is part of it too.
Yeah, and I mean, for one, somebody that I wouldn't say like I'm a big X's and O guys when it comes to a lot of sports, so I like to hear the analysis of players in the background. That's one thing that I really like, whether it's football or baseball, whatever the case might be. I like to hear opinions in the X's and O's. So that for me is a draw to watch on TV. Plus, you've got the best seat in the house. But what could baseball, a sport like baseball, do to continue to increase their viewership? And I think honestly that stuff like this is one of those things. I mean,
allow steroids.
Encourage.
Encourage PEDs. Just see what happens. Yeah. If everybody's using them, then nobody's using them. So we just get more home runs.
It should be mandated.
Offense sells tickets.
I don't know the answer, but I'll tell you, for me, it's a big difference if I'm there, and this is an obvious statement, but if I'm up in the 200s, which is good seats, nothing to complain about, versus like Delta Club, 10 rows up, I had a way different experience at that game, and just the proximity of like how fast you can see the ball going, how loud it is when it hits the mitt, the crack of the bat. It's a way different style of watching the game. There's nothing you can do about it. You can't have 40,000 people all have front row seats. It's physically impossible, so you can't change that. But for me, like just being in the park and not even talking about TV or any of that, it's a much different experience where I'm sitting. And if I'm down front row, like I'll watch the whole game. I'll be super into it. And if I'm up at the top, I'm goofing around, going to the concession stand, whatnot.
I would agree with that. So to that point, it's probably SunTrust probably did a good job making the stadium a little bit smaller, because I know some of those nosebleeds at Turner Field where, you couldn't see anything.
It's only a marginal help, though. Like, there's no way you can design the stadium where it works for everyone.
I would argue, though, that there's almost too many distractions in modern stadiums.
Yeah, there's a zip line at SunTrust.
I mean, that to me, it's like I get it.
Carnivore, you shoot the water and the horse.
Yeah, if you're trying to do that to get young kids out there, I mean, I guess I see the merit in that, but at the same time, like, I don't know. Again, this comes back to a purist standpoint. Like, if you're taking your kids to the game, why wouldn't you take them to a game to actually watch it?
Yeah, I guess maybe they did the research and found out that the kids don't want to watch it, but the dads still want to be there.
Everyone's too distracted.
iPhones,
iPads, people don't have an attention span more than 10 seconds.
So maybe to that point, to get people to pay closer attention, it seems like they could shorten the season, which we talked about in an earlier podcast, make each game, being a little bit
valuable.
more. And then not necessarily shorten the game because the 9 innings is so iconic. But is there something they could do with the pitch count?
They did the pitch clock, which helps.
Is that even really enforced that strongly though?
I think it is.
I don't know that I've ever.
What would they do?
I don't know that I've ever watched a game and I've seen somebody give a warning for a pitcher taking too long or a batter stepping. I mean, I've seen them get a warning for stepping out of the box too often. But at the same time, that typically takes place in a critical point in the game. It's kind of a game of cat and mouse. When you see a batter step out to get in the pitcher's head, make him rethink the pitch that's being, or the signs that are being given to him.
So at that point, people were probably actually paying attention because
I think it's a difference. And shout out to Brent Johnson because we almost got into a texting fight over this. But I think back in the day, like let's go back to the 50s and the 60s. Yeah, baseball.
I remember that time well.
Baseball is what kids were playing in the playgrounds. You didn't have to have anything. You had 9 gloves for your fielders and 1 bat, and you just needed a couple little things that looked like bases. I mean, because that's what the military guys were out there playing in the sand. You didn't need anything to do it. Now, everyone's ponying up for the $400 in hockey equipment and lacrosse and how all the stuff that you have to have for that. So people are kids are playing way more things. They're way more diversified in the interest that they're getting in, and it's not like everyone just grew up playing baseball. People may not find an interest in baseball, so they go put that interest in something else. When back in the day, I feel like baseball was kind of just way more prominent in what kids were doing on the weekends. Hey, let's go to the sandlot and play baseball. So then they watch baseball, and that's what they keep up with, and that's their interest. Now everything's so diversified. You're competing with, football, lacrosse, basketball, whatever you name it.
So do you think would you say that baseball is like fading as America's pastime, or do you think some sport would? Because I know, there's a lot less games, so that comes back to less games means each game means more, so it's people pay more close attention. But like the Atlanta United games, as far as soccer goes, those things are super high energy the entire time, and they're always sold out and stuff.
That's crazy. That's new. That's a new thing for this area and for us. And when I was growing up, I played soccer, but no one really cared about it. It was just your. For me, it was like my off-season sport.
I've been really impressed with the city of Atlanta, how much they've kind of embraced that team, and I don't know, maybe it's because they're good too. Atlanta has notoriously fair-weathered fans, so I think people are kind of starting to come out of the woodwork right now for the Braves because we're actually got the second best record in the National League. I
think it is a part of availability, though. You look at these guys coming from, Venezuela and those other countries, like
they grew up playing soccer, so there's...
Well, I was going back to baseball, but they grew up playing baseball, but not a lot of money invested in it. They're not paying, coaches and trainers on the weekends. That's what they have, and that's what they afford, and that's what they love and get into. So, like I said, the more we diversify and everything that everyone in this country is doing and has their interest in, it is going to pull from baseball. You can't not. It's going to happen.
I guess that's a good point. Like it was the biggest thing, so it had the most to lose when people started to kind of spread out.
But I would also be interested to find out kind of when this decline took place, and if any of it has to do with the advent of social media and kind of the swagger that other athletes like NFL players or particularly like NBA players have off the court. When you see on their social media, even when they walk into their press conferences, you talk about Cam Newton, you talk about Russell Westbrook, guys that are dressed to the nines. They look awesome. They've got all this, these chains and jewelry on.
Awesome is a strong word for how Cam Newton tends to look at post-game press conferences.
True. But, he's got a swagger about him, and I am no Cam Newton fan.
Yeah.
But I think, to me, it's kind of like, okay, well, if you see these guys in the news and they're all in all these commercials and driving these awesome cars, I'm not saying that baseball players don't have that, but I think they're much less more in the spotlight for those reasons.
Yeah, and that's definitely true.
I would think that maybe kids see that and they're like, oh, man, like I want to have that kind of a lifestyle. Like I want to have a rock star type life while playing a sport that I enjoy.
Our minds would be blown if we saw Freddie Freeman in a rap music video or something,
Yeah. To me, like,
you used to hear about Ugla. Ugla would go out in Buckhead in his white T-shirt, hang out with people
to his detriment.
Yeah.
So that to me is one thing that I could point to, and I guess
I think that's a good point, because I know Brent pointed this out to me one time when we were talking about this same thing, is that there's only one of the top 25 athletes as far as social media presence goes. There's only one baseball player in the top 25, and it's not even like it's Tim Tebow. So
oh yeah, I do remember
player.
That doesn't count.
That was
with air quotes.
that was really interesting.
Yeah.
That he
So
brought
I mean,
that
when
up.
you take away Tim Tebow and you think of him as basically a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback or an announcer, I mean, baseball's kind of third on what he's known for. There's no baseball players in the top 25 in social media presence.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I think that's a good point by Will.
that's just kind of a hunch, like something. Hey,
Yeah.
maybe, and that would be interesting to find out. Like, is this where we started to see that decline? So I don't know what the answer is as far as bringing back more viewers and more attendees to the game. I mean, you can try and spice things up all you want. I
think as far as bringing back more viewers and attendance is you hit a bunch of home runs like Acuna is doing for the Braves right now. I mean, people are tuning in to watch him.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that takes us. That's actually our next topic that we wanted to touch on. The Braves have had a great season thus far, and to be honest with you, I didn't follow the Braves super closely over the last few seasons, but it's exciting to see what they're doing, and Ronald Acuna is a major reason for that. I don't know that they are in this position without him, and he was a part of I guess you could call it a minor controversy here, within the last couple of days. So they're playing the Marlins. I was actually supposed to be at this game last night, and then I fell asleep. But
Story of my life.
Man, I thought you were there the whole time.
Yeah, I thought you were there too, and you texted me and asked if I wanted to go. I was assuming you were there.
I would have liked to have gone, but so as most people know, Ronald Acuna was on a tear, having leadoff home runs. I think he had hit 5 consecutively, 3 leadoff home runs in the last 3 games, obviously in the same series against the Marlins. And so he came up, to bat against Jose Urena with the streak on the line. And the first pitch of the game, Urena beams him with a 97-mile-an-hour fastball, which to me, and David, I'd love for you to chime in, that you don't miss on a 97-mile-an-hour fastball for the first pitch of the game. I think it was pretty clear that it was intentional.
And they said that the guys that keep the stats and stuff for that said it was the fastest pitch he'd thrown on a first pitch all year, and it was in the 99th percentile of pitches he'd thrown for the year. So, I mean, that pitch was coming with speed, and that wasn't an inside pitch that got away from him.
I try to find the best in everyone, so
one of your many flaws.
I know. I immediately go to the benefit of the doubt. Maybe
that he didn't do it intentionally.
No. I'm just saying in general. When this happens in general, maybe, right? Because it's always possible. There's always a chance that you lose it, right? However, when I watched this one, to me it was very clear from a pitching standpoint that Now, I don't know this guy enough, and I'm not going to be like, I watch him all the time, so I could definitely tell a difference in his arm slot and whatever. I'm not going to try to go into that, but it really looks like he did not follow through in the sense of like, I'm really trying to make sure that this one slips to the right side. Because most pitchers, you're trying to be low. You're trying to be low the knees all the time. And to do that consistently, that requires a very exaggerated follow through. Your arm goes all the way down past your knees, and you do drills growing up, just getting as low as you can with your arm. Almost like touching your.
So you're saying
cleats.
The fact that he was kind of lazy at the end of that pitch shows that he was like, I'm just going to hit this guy, and it doesn't matter whether it's a good pitch or not.
I'm surprised he was able to throw it as hard as he could with the lack of what looked like a follow through.
Really?
So you're not saying that this was unintentional?
No, I'm saying from what it looked like from his pitch. It looked intentional to me.
Yeah, it was definitely intentional.
And it was a miss too. It wasn't. Usually when you get into the game, you've thrown your 10 whatever warm up pitches, you're nailing it. I feel like major league pitchers at that level, you're missing that bad. If you're throwing a junk pitch, right? If you threw a curveball and it slipped out, that's
a fastball.
It was a fastball.
It was a 2-seam fastball.
And it was your first pitch after I'm sure you threw 10 perfect pitches right before that.
Yeah.
You're not sweating. It's not raining. It can be downpouring and you see pitchers just still humming it in there. So.
Yeah, to me, it's silly that we're even still debating about whether it was intentional. I think it was clearly intentional. The question is, did he kind of go rogue? Was that something they decided in the
you saw the catcher.
clubhouse?
Yeah,
you saw the catcher.
the catcher stood up and didn't go to defend his pitcher? Is
Well,
that what
he
you're
stood
talking
up. You saw him kind of give a shrug, like, seriously, like what the hell was that?
And then one thing that I read, I guess one of the the rules that you're supposed to do is if you're the catcher and your pitcher hits a batter and it looks like it's going to be to a fight, the catcher gets in between the batter and the pitcher because he's wearing pads and stuff. And the Marlins catcher didn't do that.
Yeah, but to Will's point, he did. I mean, they brought it up in the game. Like you could just kind of see, like he looks down and he looks up, like, man,
like, oh, here we go.
And so the fact that he didn't jump in between them, like, I don't think that means like, he was in on it. I think a lot of people saw it. There's definitely a chance that, let's just even say 3 or 4 people knew that this could have been a possibility.
Yeah.
Does not mean the whole team had an idea whatsoever. I mean, the right fielder could have been completely clueless. Like, man,
Yeah.
So
yeah, I would imagine with most stuff like that, it's rare that the entire team is in on it.
right. And I would say like maybe 2 or 3 were like maybe joshing around about it, and he got cocky enough to be like, I'm gonna do it. I don't
know. I think
because I know Acuna had homered in the previous game twice, and you could argue flipped his bat on his second home run and kind of stared down the pitcher of the game before. So not that justifies it, but I think that there was definitely
home runs.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
no, I mean I agree.
him.
I agree with that. Unless Puig or Harper does it, then I totally agree with that.
I mean,
But I mean I think there's definitely some animosity, some friction between Acuna and the pitching staff for the rest of the Marlins going in, just because Acuna was just eating their lunch. I mean that entire series he was unbelievable.
If you're a pitcher, every home run is a punch to the gut. I mean, it's like, oh man, that guy just dialed it in on me right there. I mean, I was trying to hum in my best fastball or get you with a breaking ball, but you just showed me, so that was always my reaction. So it's like I would never be like, oh, I'm gonna get him by hitting him. It's like that's the most like 5th grade thing you could do.
I think it's a Bush League play, and it was interesting.
97 miles an hour. I mean,
right
in the elbow. You know what I think? What I think happened is so he went back into the game. He tried to get back into the game. They wrapped his arm up, which looked like athletic tape. It looked pretty tight. It did not look like a compression sleeve or something. And he was out in the field, and you see him start squeezing his hand. So it looked like he was having a reaction where his fingers looked like they were going numb. I mean, because he got hit clear on that funny bone area. What I think happened is they wrapped that arm pretty tight. You
think they made it go numb by wrapping it too tight?
I think they wrapped it, and it was swelling, and it couldn't swell because it was so compressed by that tape that it was probably compressing on some nerves or just that area in general, because you just see him squeeze. I mean, his hand was not touched, but that's what you see him squeezing his hands like he was losing feeling.
I mean, probably when something like that happens, especially with the benches clearing immediately after, like there's so much adrenaline that it takes a few minutes for it to wear off and for you to realize.
Yeah, I mean, I want to comment on the aftermath of it because it wasn't an immediate ejection, which I think was the first mistake by the home plate umpire. I think if something like that is clear, it was clearly intentional, high and fast, then it should have made an immediate ejection and a warning to the benches. Now, if you're not going to immediately eject him, which I think is what caused the Braves player, the Braves player and Brian Snitker to exit the bench, is because it was like, well, what the hell? Like, are you not going to do anything? So I think that was mistake number 1. I think mistake number 2 is if you are not going to immediately eject him, you leave him in the game until the 3rd inning, when the Braves can respond and retaliate, because that's even the score, get everybody's, diffuse the situation and then let it go. And then that's when you warn both the benches.
Well, if anyone wants to argue that it's not intentional, there's the probability of it happening by accident is so small because of all the variables involved. It was the hardest throw he's ever thrown.
Yeah.
For a first pitch or whatever. It was the whole situation with Acuna just racking up on these guys. And his clear, to me, what seemed to be a clear effort in his body motion to make sure it was on the right. All those things don't line up for an accident.
The only thing I think you could say to the umps, credit is that it probably just caught him so off guard. I feel like, you kind of, when you've been calling games for a long time, you get settled in and you're like, okay, here's the first pitch, top of the first, 0-0 count, and all of a sudden the batter gets hit by a 97 mile an hour fastball. You got to be your head's got to be spinning a little bit. Like, oh my God, did that just happen? Like, I wasn't really paying attention to the pitcher's body language in that. Now the benches are clearing.
I don't know.
I agree that hindsight 2020, they probably should have just thrown him out right away. I don't know about leaving him in until the third inning. I mean, I like the idea of that. That just seems dangerous because a Braves pitcher could throw 97 mile an hour fastball, but this time at his head, and that could just spiral out of control.
So 2 things with that. I think as a home plate umpire, you're managing the game, and as you said, they've been doing this for a while. So they should have a finger on the pulse of what's going on. I mean, it's no secret that this guy has been going yard over the past 3 games. So that should play into your thought process a little bit. Like, okay, this is a possibility. So when it happens, if it happens, we're ready to address it. Again, to your point, I could understand, like, first pitch of the game, probably didn't see that coming. But that can't take you completely by surprise when it's your job to understand, particularly in this type of a situation, how you're going to handle it when it does happen.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And they probably should have a huddle before and say kind of what is the narrative going into this game. And I know in the SEC, refs do that, I've heard.
It was such a nothing game anyway. Like, if we're talking about playoffs, World Series, then that decision by the umpire
have nothing to play for.
Right. And it was it game 3 or game 4 of the series?
It was 4.
I think it was game 4, so we'd already won 3. So we'd already won the series. We were going for the sweep. Their season's over.
Yeah. So it's not like the umpire has to go like, ooh, man, if I make this call, what am I impacting? It's like, it doesn't matter. Just toss them. I mean, you're paid to make this, call decisions that happen in the microseconds at plays at the plate or whatnot. Make a logical decision
you need to take control of the game, and I think that would have avoided the benches clearing. I don't really care. That doesn't bother me.
I love a good bench clear.
And
I'm watching baseball, especially before September.
That doesn't bother me at all. I mean, it happened actually, I think it was yesterday as well. There was a scuffle between Puig and I can't remember the name of the Giants catcher, but it was, now we're back on Puig. He fouled off a
can't get away from this guy.
He fouled off a ball and tossed his bat up and grabbed it, which to me, honestly, didn't look like anything. And then the catcher said something to him, and that's when Puig turns around, comes back, the pushing and shoving starts, and benches clear again. I don't have any problem with benches clearing and people coming out. Of course, in baseball, it's always a running joke that nothing ever really happens. And these scuffles, these guys come out and it's just hold me back,
yell
hold me
at
back.
each other, and then slowly back into
the exactly. So I don't have any problem with the benches clearing, but as a home plate umpire, if you are trying to avoid that situation, you got to eject him immediately. That's my 2 cents.
No, I agree with that.
But the next question is, and we talked about these unwritten rules of baseball, do plays like this have any place in the game? Because there was a Mets announcer, it was live on a broadcast, and I'm going to be paraphrasing here, but he said something to the effect of, if that's my team or I'm the pitcher and he's taking you deep on the last 3 times he's gone to bat, you got to hit him, you got to take him down. That was effectively what he said. So my question to you guys is, do plays like this have anything, have a place in baseball? Is it something that you should just take with a grain of salt and say, this is part of the game? Or, I mean, especially in this type of situation when the guy's on a streak.
When I was in high school, this conversation would take place all the time.
Really?
And mostly because not even just what happened over the course of the season. The season's not that long. We knew these people because they lived across town or we grew up with them, So if your buddy that have known for 10 years just hit a home run off of you, and you're talking to your infielders and they're like, oh man, you got peg him in the hip next time up, and mostly it's a joke, but they're not. Honestly, people that aren't pitching, oh man, they will push you to do it. I mean, because they have nothing to lose. They hit him, do it, and so it kind of leaves you in a predicament of, am I doing this for camaraderie, or am I going to lose something from doing this? Because at the end of the day, you're not going to they're just going to stand there at their position silent, and they don't get anything out of it. But the conversation happens. For me personally, I hate, to me, that was never, that never was a good retort. It's like, no, I'm going to go back up there and strike this guy out, pegging him in the hip it's childish to me, but I'm just saying, those conversations do take place and people do talk about it. And I think it happens in situations. It's just, obviously to the major league level, I think it happens in situations that just aren't as obvious as this one. That you can be on both sides of the fence, and we could talk about it till we're blue in the face, and you could be on both sides. But this one was just like,
this one specifically, I don't think there's any place, because I mean it was a 97-mile-an-hour fastball that he hit him in the elbow. So think about, like, that was an intentional hit. Imagine if the pitch had gotten away from him and he hit him in the head, he could have killed him. So I think, I mean, there's a time and a place where maybe sometimes you do have to paint somebody a little bit. So in certain situations, but
well, that's what they were saying.
Slow it down and make sure that you're going to hit them somewhere that maybe knocks them out for the game. But this is like their livelihood, and
even throw a cut fastball that's starting inside and slightly comes in 3 inches.
I don't know, but if you're a linebacker and a quarterback throws a touchdown, is your next thought like, I'm gonna hit him in the knee and try and take? To me, that's like,
because that's the thing.
That's
and
ridiculous.
I guess, that's the thing that baseball doesn't have, is it doesn't have a way that you can legally. You can strike somebody out, but that's not like physically, like, in football, say somebody burns you for a touchdown, you're on defense, then the next series you can go out there and legally get a good hit on him and get him back. Whereas in baseball, there's not really a way to retaliate. But I would argue that, like Will said, this is more similar to a quarterback throwing a touchdown and standing there watching his receiver celebrate, and all of a sudden somebody clocks him from behind. I mean, it's totally dirty, and it doesn't really have any place in the game, in my opinion.
Well, people talking about the legacy of these unwritten rules, I think it stems from way back in the day, because people were ruthless, early in the 20s and whatnot. That's why they had to come up with all those rules about how you can slide into second base on double plays, because they would take shortstops out and slice up their shins with those, rugged metal cleats and stuff. So I think a lot of that kind of mentality has trickled through. It's so much more less than them. But if you want to talk about the legacy aspect of it and the unwritten rules, I think it stems all the way back from then.
So, I mean, to that point, I think there are certain situations where hitting a batter hard or, backing them up off the plate makes sense. But I think those situations more so stem from, a guy sliding in with his cleats high, or, bowling over your catcher.
This one was pretty petty. I mean, it was in retaliation to the fact that this guy was just destroying all of your pitchers. He was just better than you, and you were mad about it.
Exactly. I mean, I could understand if he bowled over your catcher going into a close, play at the plate, something to that effect. But you're hitting him because you can't stop him, which I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I mean, if you have spearheading the catcher and they end up on the ground for a minute because they lost their breath, those hits just look terrible, or not because the guy's performing well. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So we're gonna move on, but before we do, I want to give a shout out to Ed Freeman from State Farm. If you're like me and you're accident prone, and you're also like me and you seek out the best coverage, that's why we all rely on Ed Freeman from State Farm. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Ed Freeman is the best agent in the state, if not within the heavens. So
we're going to run out of things that are...
I'm going to continue to find things that are bigger eventually. Okay. So if you've got a home, a car, a boat, or a life, check out Ed Freeman from State Farm for all of your insurance coverage needs. So
I've needed a lot of them.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah. David and I were talking before the podcast.
Done good by David for sure.
Yeah. So, but we're gonna kind of move on, and we're gonna do some have some lighthearted conversation here with a couple of fun Mount Rushmore discussions, which these are always a good time. I'm interested to hear what you guys have on your list, and we're gonna start off. These are like absolutely random. We just thought about this before the show, and we were like, this would be kind of fun.
Yeah, we didn't realize this baseball talk would go so long. Yeah, I think that's what it is. We were just kind of looking for some content.
So
here we go.
First one, Mount Rushmore of superheroes. Jimmy,
you wanna? My first one would probably be Batman, just because I was in high school when Dark Knight came out. I'd maintain that Dark Knight is the best superhero movie of all time. And Batman's just, he's not a true superhero. He's just out there doing what any, billionaire with infinite time to train.
His special powers are being rich and good looking.
Yeah, and to go to Nepal and learn secrets from Liam Neeson. Yeah, so I would put Batman up there. I've always just really enjoyed him because it seems like, I could maybe be him one day.
Is that your?
Yeah, that's
if this whole pharmacy thing doesn't work out.
And then if I don't get drafted in the NFL, then Batman is plan C. But Superman, I don't see myself ever getting to that level because I can't fly.
Yeah, well, I also had Batman on my list for a lot of those same reasons, although the only thing that would be holding me back is the fact that he doesn't actually have superpowers, which I guess you could argue something like Iron Man. He's also just rich and good looking and has a bunch of resources at his disposal.
Yeah.
Like a super genius, maybe. David, what did you have? Did you?
I'm googling superheroes.
Oh my god! All right, well, I'm gonna give you.
David was not prepared.
I was gonna say Batman, so now I'm coming up with some
You
alternatives.
can't think of any other superhero.
To be fair, David set up all this equipment while Will and I just sat here and talked about what our favorite superhero was. So I guess we can give David a pass.
Well, I'm gonna give you my second one, and the second one is Spider-Man because he legitimately does have superpowers. Yeah, keep scrolling, David. Bitten by a radioactive spider, and then all of a sudden can like climb up walls, jump super high, and shoot webs. Now, I don't know because like in the first movie with Tobey Maguire, which is probably one of the worst superhero movies of all time, he can shoot webs like out of his wrist. But then I think in the comic book, he actually like creates the web material in a lab.
Yeah, in the most recent Spider-Man, he has like a thing that goes around his wrist.
Which one is it?
I didn't see those, but I saw Avengers: Infinity War, and that's Spider-Man that's in that.
What was the actor that played the other Spider-Man that was just kind of like a blip on the radar? Because it went.
Oh, the guy that looked
Garfield.
like from.
Was that any good? Was he good in that?
Oh, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Saying the original Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire wasn't good because that was his name, right?
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire.
No,
Green Goblin with James Franco as Green Goblin. Well, Green Goblin's son.
I just remember Tony.
That movie was
Maguire
amazing.
And Kristen Dunst.
That movie was and Kristen Dunst.
Okay, that movie, in hindsight, was terrible because Tobey Maguire is a terrible actor. The only thing I think that salvaged that film was Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin to begin with because he's so creepy to look at.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe's super creepy, and then James Franco did a really good job as his son.
I would agree
it
with
was
that.
Good casting.
I would agree with that. I just don't think. I think that the movie left a lot to be desired.
I thought it was better than the third one with Venom, where he like randomly does
that was also,
dance
but
in
that
a
was
coffee shop or something.
That was also Tobey Maguire, that wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the same franchise, but you can have good movies and bad movies inside of the same, not 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so I'll say that I would agree that the first one was better, but out of the most recent Spider-Mans, was Garfield's better than Maguire's.
I actually haven't seen any of the Spider-Man since
I haven't
Tobey
seen
Maguire
it.
stopped being Spider-Man.
I haven't even seen the one with the new kid from Avengers because he had his own movie, didn't he?
I think so. I think it's called The Amazing Spider-Man. We probably should have done more research on this.
We're just carving faces into the side of the mountains without having anything to go on here.
Yeah.
Since you stole all of mine.
All both of them.
All both for all the same reasons.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go on a limb here and say Daredevil.
Okay.
And I looked it up, and it did say he was a superhero. I was on the fence. I didn't know if he was just a really cool guy.
Just a blind guy, right?
Yeah, he's blind. He has a radar vision.
Yeah, he's blind, but
I would argue that Daredevil with Ben Affleck was much, much worse than the original Spider-Man.
For sure.
But that was not
I didn't even make it through that whole movie.
But
David going out on a limb with the edgy pick here.
Yeah.
That's what
this is my sleeper superhero.
But there's people that can do that in real life, not
be blind and be
superhero level.
superheroes.
Blind and have radar vision. And
I'm gonna need you to cite
like a ninja.
some specific instances or sources
I
because
will put some links in the YouTube video.
you do that.
So there's people that can make clicking noises, like they walk around and they make clicking noises.
I don't think this is a thing.
There's a blind guy who rode a bike around.
You're thinking of a bat.
Man,
an actual bat, and I think whales do that too.
That's called echolocation, David.
It is, yeah. And this guy rode around a parking deck, a blind guy, very slowly,
successfully.
Yeah, but he did not
clicking.
Yeah, clicking, and he said he could kind of figure out what things are by doing it.
So what if he's in a place that doesn't have a lot of echoes? Because that's obviously why he did it in a parking deck.
Harder,
yeah.
But they had him doing it on the sidewalk. Like he walks around with no pole or anything. He just. Yeah.
Here's a fun fact about echo for our listeners that are into trivia. The reason that people think that carrots are good for your eyesight. Do you guys know why this is?
Because they're orange.
No, it's because in World War I, the British Royal Air Force had invented sonar or radar, one of those, and they didn't want the Germans to know about it. They didn't want anyone to know why their pilots were so good at fighting at night. And so they put out the rumor that they fed their pilots a lot of carrots and that carrots gave you better night vision.
And
totally
the Germans
made up.
Bought that.
Yep, it was just propaganda. It's totally made up.
Well, more importantly, I bought that because I've been
we
eating
still.
carrots
My
for
parents,
a long time.
my parents have been
because
telling
I
me
thought
eating
that
carrots-
made my eyesight better.
Yeah.
So you're telling me it has no effect whatsoever?
If your eyesight is failing, it can slow the process of the failing, but it doesn't make it better, and it definitely doesn't make you better able to see at night.
Maybe Ben Affleck should have brought on some carrots.
It wouldn't have helped.
Anyways, I'm gonna go on to my next. Wait, I thought. Okay, yeah, I guess that's true because he was blind the whole time, right?
No, the
Got hit by the
the
acid.
radioactive acid spilled on him and turned him and gave him superpowers. So he did have superpowers.
Yeah.
And that was the same acid that turned the Ninja Turtles into
he wasn't
the
just a
Ninja
blind
Turtles.
guy.
Where is this acid, and why have they not bottled that shit
It's,
up?
I don't know. It's in like a red bucket, like you shoot in the Area 51 games and it blows up, or like
Okay.
every shooting video game.
Or
Yeah.
the Area 51 and Tony
But
Hawk.
that is the Ninja Turtles in the Ninja Turtles comic book where it shows like their origin. It shows the thing spilling and then them turning into the Ninja Turtles. But in the background, you see Daredevil becoming Daredevil. It's the same accident, same magic acid.
Wow, that's wild.
Another fun fact.
So my next superhero,
Yeah.
Thor.
Okay.
I think Thor is a badass superhero because he's a god,
Yeah.
and he's got the hammer, the lightning. He can kind of fly with that thing.
Yeah. Can Thor fly? I don't
Well,
understand.
he like spins the thing, the
Okay.
hammer, and then like just pulls him off. But then he
Yeah.
can also get like teleported by calling on.
It's confusing.
people.
I feel like they're like I've only really seen the Avengers movie. I haven't
Yeah.
seen the actual standalone Thors, but I feel like they're not very-
Ragnarok was really good.
Okay. I'll have
I
to
will
see
say that. It's actually on. I think it's on Netflix right now. It's a really good one.
But I feel like they're kind of inconsistent with Thor's strength.
Yeah.
I feel like he loses fights that then later he does things that it's like, well, how did he lose that earlier fight?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I think he's a cool guy.
Okay, that's a fair one. And last one, kind of an honorable mention, kind of a silly one, but I'll give a shout out to Quailman, Doug's alter ego from the show Doug that we all like to watch growing up.
Yep.
He wears underpants on the outside of his shorts, and he wore a belt and a thing that looked like a quail. And we can maybe put it up on our Instagram for Throwback Thursday. But I was Quailman to a social when we were sophomores in college.
Are you in a frat?
I was many moons ago at the University of
Sick.
Georgia. But friend of the show and avid listener Brian Guile, he was Captain America for that same
That's
event.
ironic.
And there's a picture of us that I can find and we'll
It's terrible.
try and post. I don't know how
He was in a
Instagram
suit
works.
that was like entirely too small for him.
Yeah.
Brian Guile, like 6'4". This thing was made for somebody that was like 5'10".
Yeah.
And somehow squeezed. It was hilarious.
It was fun. That was a fun night. I
That was
remember.
good.
Yeah.
So the next Mount Rushmore discussion that we wanted to bring on was the non-mainstream sports. What are the best non-mainstream sports?
So these are
people
sports
should
that
pay
would
more
be
attention to?
featured on like ESPN 8, the Ocho. So
Yeah.
outside Big Four, outside ones like tennis, golf, stuff that we've kind of touched on in the podcast.
And I'm going to kick it off with curling because everybody
Curling was mainstream for like 2 weeks in the winter. Though.
exactly, but I
Yeah.
think it recedes back into obscurity when the Winter Olympics end. But I think that people would get a kick out of it if it was more organized and there was some form of league around
They
it.
have curling leagues and curling lessons in Sandy Springs.
Are you serious?
I looked it up right after the Olympics, but right after the Olympics, they were all booked for the next like 3 months.
That
But it's like an
sounds our
hour
kind of
lesson,
sport.
and then you get to play against the people that you learned with at the end, and then you get a free drink.
If you can drink during it, I think that would be
You
even
might.
more
I don't
fun.
know if you can BYOB, but I know they give you one at the end, so I think
That's
that'd be
worth
pretty
it.
fun. Curling is fun to watch when you halfway start to understand. I still don't understand most of it, but I had fun watching it in the Olympics. For mine is definitely going to be cornhole. I think you can. That's the measure of a man is how good he is at cornhole. If you can't get at least one in the hole every 4 bags, I don't want you in my life at all. It's a great tailgate
Harsh.
game. It's fun to watch. It's fun to drink a beer while you're playing. There's not that many sports you can play standing still with one hand. So that's a big plus for me. And that's mine.
Now I'm just trying to think of sports that I could play standing still.
I'm
with one
about
hand.
to name one as my obscure sport. I really like watching darts on ESPN.
Boom.
Okay. I thought you were going to say
You could
darts
definitely
or-
do that with a beer and standing still. with one
Yeah.
hand.
But what's amazing, we've all played darts. It's, some are better than others, but these guys on TV are literally splitting the prior dart that they just threw. Like,
Do they really? You can. They have
No,
darts
I
that
mean,
split
but-
apart.
but-
Like
No,
an arrow?
but you could imagine what it'd be like if
like
they did.
Robin, like the Robin Hood with where he was a fox.
Imagine almost doing that. I mean,
Okay.
they are landing the triple 20. Just. I mean, the tips of these darts are. half a
I think
centimeter
David
from-
picked darts because that's who the bad guy is in the Daredevil movie. Bullseye,
that-
and
is
he's
that-
really good at darts.
I don't-
David's
No, I
just
gotta
on
confess, I never watched that movie because
David's
it
on
looked
the
so
Daredevil
bad.
train. It was not good, but
Oh.
I don't know. He's really good at throwing like ninja stars and stuff. And
Huh.
you get introduced to him, and he's in a bar and he's playing darts and he hits triple 20s.
Do you remember? And this is not a legitimate selection, but do you remember when we were at the lake one time and they were doing Sea-Doo racing?
That's a
Like we
legit
were
thing.
watching it live, or
Yeah,
we were watching
it
on
was
TV?
out there. I think I
What-
can't. I
which
think it was
lake?
Hartwell that we were.
That's
out.
a legit thing. There's a girl I knew at high school that's like that's what she did.
I mean, it's basically a motorcycle for water.
But
Why-
she did
Right.
the
race motorcycles.
she did
Why
the
wouldn't they race
stand-up
them?
ones,
Oh, really?
which is kind of cool.
They had both out there, I think, just messing around. But I saw it on TV the other day. So I saw it on TV, and then we actually saw it in person. And man, these things get out. They accelerate up to like 75 miles an hour. And I mean, if
Jet skis are the same way. If you ever do it on snow and you get a heavy duty jet ski, those things will go 60 miles an
A
hour.
jet ski on snow.
Or not jet skis.
That would be crazy.
Sorry, snowmobiles.
I would like to see that.
I'm sure a jet ski on snow, if it was slushy enough snow, would go somewhere. Snowmobiles, though, is what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure my cousin Travis said that one time he got a snowmobile stuck in a tree. So I don't know how he did that one time, but
Just gotta send it.
yeah, shout out, shout out to Travis in Lake Tahoe.
All right, so we're gonna move on. We got one more thing that we wanted to cover, and it's the best TV shows that you grew up watching as a kid. This one was tough because there were a lot of good ones. Like back in the 90s, I think they progressively got worse.
I would agree with that.
But
That was like the golden age of like Nicktoons and
yeah,
whatever channel
a
Rocket
Nickelodeon
Power was
kid,
on.
yeah.
That was Nickelodeon, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even think about Rocket Power. That was a really good one.
Rocket
Woogity
Power was a
woogity.
good show. Yeah.
Are You Afraid of the Dark just had their
Oh.
26th birthday.
Really?
Yeah.
That means I missed, because I'm 27, so I missed a few years of it then, because I wasn't allowed to watch it till I was 7. No, it was
okay.
rated Y7, so my mom wouldn't let me watch till I
my
was 7.
Yeah, this one was tough. I think if I'm going with cartoons, I gotta say, Hey Arnold.
Oh yeah,
That was a
Hey
really
Arnold's
good one.
yeah.
It had everything you needed.
I liked Angry Beavers.
That was a good one.
Isn't it called Two Angry Beavers? Or is it just called Angry
it's Angry
It
Beavers?
was just Angry Beavers.
Yeah.
Dagbert, and
Daggett
Norbert,
and
Daggett
Norbert.
and Norbert.
That was a great show. I forgot about that.
Cat Dog was good.
That was good too.
Yeah. I went with a little more of a throwback than y'all. I said Arthur. That was like my show growing
God.
up. I used to,
That was a really good one.
yeah, when school was winding down, 1st or 2nd grade, that was what I was excited to get back and watch Arthur.
And then you
So
had
you had DW that was such a little brat, and then Buster was his friend that was the rabbit that was cool, and the brain was always inventing stuff.
yeah. That was-
Salute Your Shorts. You remember that one? Oh, what about the? Do you remember the game they used to play? There was Figure It Out, which was good. where you-
Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yeah, Legends of the Hidden
that
Temple.
Yeah,
was-
that
I
was a
dressed
good
up as
one.
that for Halloween a couple of years ago.
Really?
And Guts.
Which
When they had to ascend the aggro crag. That was like the mountain at the end, and they had to get at the top.
that's different from Legends of the
Yeah.
Hidden Temple.
Two
Okay, I
different
don't
things.
remember Guts.
Guts.
Which team from Legends of the Hidden Temple were you?
I was the Golden Monkeys.
Wasn't there the Barracudas?
Is it the Golden Monkeys?
I always like the
I thought it was
Barracudas.
the Purple Monkeys. Golden Monkeys a beer.
That's a beer.
Yeah.
Or
the
it was
green
green.
monkeys?
It was green.
I
and
was
a
the
golden
red
monkey
hair
on it.
team.
Yeah.
It was green and had a gold monkey on it, so I'm assuming it was the
I
golden
think it was
monkey.
the green
I'm going to do a
monkeys.
little bit of background research on that.
We'll get our intern to pull that stuff.
I read an article on Legends of the Hidden Temple one time, and it was saying
Was this on the Chive?
yeah,
Also.
yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
It was saying that how hard the show actually was for those kids, because they wouldn't really explain a lot. They would kind of just bring them out there and be like, okay, for this next challenge, you're going to run up here, jump over this, jump around here. You need to take this, tiki head and put it over here and do that. And the kids' heads are just like swimming. It's like
Yeah.
it's like when someone tries to give
They
you
were like 11 years old.
give you directions from Georgia to Utah, and they're naming like places to turn, and you're like, you lost me after like the first two
Yeah,
things you
when
said.
they use directions like east or west. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
All right. I don't
fact
have a
check this.
compass.
It was the green monkeys. They also
Okay.
had the red jaguars, the blue barracudas,
Barracudas.
the orange iguanas, the purple parrots, and the silver snakes.
Oh,
Silver
I didn't
snakes,
realize there were 6 different teams.
silver snakes was almost my favorite, but I feel like that is such an overused team on Halloween. I had to go with the monkeys.
The Silver Snake. See, I would think they would paint them to be the bad guys. That sounds like Slytherin from Harry
Exactly.
Potter.
All that was good too. It was like kids' version of SNL.
Yeah, all that was
That
just like a
was
sketch
Kenan-
show. I think
Kenan
Acuna was on it.
Thompson. Yeah.
Amanda Bynes, I
Yeah.
think, was on it at the beginning.
Yeah,
Oh.
when she was normal.
She also had a show called The Amanda Show that was
Mhm.
also that, right? It was like a sketch
It was
show.
a spin-off, yeah.
Yeah.
Of just her.
Drake and Josh. That was a good show.
Clarissa Explains It All.
No.
Yeah, not just me. All right.
Alex Mack. You guys remember that one?
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Didn't she get involved in that like cult thing at one point? That might be another Alex.
I don't know, but that's a heavy accusation to level on a podcast as widely views as this.
Again, I'll add a link.
That's a bold move.
I'll
David.
add a link in the YouTube description.
All right.
And I will one show. I never watched it because I think it was after our time. But Post Malone apparently really liked the show Zack and Cody because he has a song that references that pretty heavily.
You know, that's after our time, I think.
Yeah, that was when I listened to that song, and I realized that Post Malone must be younger than me. And I went and Googled it. I think he's like 23.
Only knew $9 million. Pete and Pete.
I don't even know what that
Pete
is.
and Pete.
No,
I remember
it's
that
Pete.
one.
Had
but I don't
the
know.
mermaid tattoo on his forearm.
I thought that was like
Nope.
the Disney Channel original movie, 14th year or whatever it was.
Ooh, that could be a future.
That's
going to
be a
best
future one.
Disney Channel
Best-
original movies.
Smart House.
Okay, David.
Okay, save it.
Jeez,
Save it
come
for
on.
future podcasts.
All right. Well, that's going to about do it for this episode. I want to thank all of our listeners and viewers out there for joining us once again. If you haven't, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify. You can subscribe on YouTube. If you would like to watch the podcast, be sure to like and share as well. But from all of us here, myself, Jimmy, and David, we want to wish everybody out there a good rest of their evening, and we look forward to talking with you next week. So thanks again, and go Dogs.
Go Dogs.